morning from wherever you are. Freezing or warm. I'm not sure if you're in front of a heater, if you're at the office with the AC on. I hope you're all well and keeping warm. Thank you once again for joining us for our session today. And just to say a big thank you to all of you for your continuous support as we continue with this series. Just want to welcome everyone from wherever you are, everyone on LinkedIn, everyone on Facebook. Thank you for taking this time to be part of this session. We really appreciate it. So once again, today we have Richard Durant, who is going to continue with our session of the transportation of dangerous goods. And as you know, today we are doing class 5. And so it's a continuation from all the previous classes. If you haven't been able to be a part of those, please just put a note on a comment or on Facebook or LinkedIn, as well as on the chat. And then I'll be able to just send you all the previous sessions, which are already on our YouTube channel. And so don't forget to subscribe to all of those. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms. And so without further ado, I think we'll just continue where we left off. Richard, good morning, good afternoon. I keep saying good morning because we're used to having these sessions in the morning. How are you, Richard?
Yeah, good morning, Rose. No, well, thank you. And yes, as you say, rather chilly, bit of frost around this morning in Johannesburg. So yeah, winter's arrived, yes.
We are definitely in winter already, but hey, it's the usual. So once again, Richard, thank you so much. I know you know the drill by now. We can continue. So everyone, just to let you know, Richard will continue and present. If you guys have questions regarding what he's talking about or any of the previous things that are linked to today's topic, please do not hesitate to just put on your comments, put on your questions. Let's interact. He's here to give us the insight that we need. He's here to give us the knowledge that we need. So don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to interact. We'll be able to try and answer all the questions before the end of the sessions. If not, we are always going to find another time or send emails and info after the sessions. So Richard, the platform is yours. Thank you so much. And you can go ahead.
Right. Thank you, Rose. If we could just ask that everybody switches off their videos, please, and their mics, so that we don't get interference from a bandwidth point of view. Thank you. So I'm going to switch off my video. If I can find my controls, bear with me. Right. We can try and answer questions as we go along, but sometimes it's a bit difficult. So I think, yeah, if you can put your questions into the chat and we can try and get to them at the end, or as Rose said, we can try and help you on emails, etc. So what we're going to be talking about today is, sorry, let me just go back 2 slides. So those are my details. We're going to be talking about class 5 oxidizers, which are known as a 5.1, and organic peroxides, which is a 5.2. My details are there, email address, etc., etc. So you can get hold of me if you need to. These 2 products are not, or these 2 classes are not that common. But when we start talking about them, you'll realize that there are quite a few products that we deal with on a day-to-day basis that fall into these categories. So they are lumped together under class 5. You'll see on the diamond, the pictogram is the same. The class at the bottom, class number, class 5.1, 5.2. So they fall under class 5, but they are classed as separate within that class. And yes, the names are different. They're oxidizers and organic peroxide. They have a different name but their nature is very similar, and I'll go into that. So that's why they are put together under one class, but are treated separately. But overall, as at the bottom of your screen says, any material that can cause or enhance the combustion of other material. So I'll explain what that means shortly. So they are not combustible, they don't burn in their own right, but if they're not flammable in their own right, but if they start to burn, they then enhance combustion of other materials and can create a very serious situation, which I'll show you shortly. So the class 1, the oxidizers, which I've just said very briefly, although not necessarily flammable themselves, can produce large amounts of oxygen, increasing the risk and intensity of fire in other materials. And the organic peroxides are sensitive to heat, are thermally unstable, and generate increasing amounts of heat as they decompose, speeding up the chemical breakdown, which in turn accelerates the heat buildup. So you'll see both will increase the flammability, or the flame will increase the heat buildup, and the organic peroxides most burn rapidly, and some are sensitive to friction or impact. So friction or impact, you've got to be careful when transporting. There's always movement on vehicles, in packaging, that type of stuff. So these are quite technical terms, but when I show you some of the practical side of it, it'll make a bit more sense. So class 1, this is a list of some of the oxidizers. There are others, but these are some of the ones that you may be aware of or have come across. First one is ammonium nitrate, which is commonly known as a fertilizer, goes as an additive into a lot of fertilizers. Nitrates are used a lot in fertilizers, but yeah, this is particularly ammonium nitrate. Calcium hypochloride, which is a swimming pool chemical, HTH, which you can buy at your local Pick n Pay or Builders Warehouse. If you have a swimming pool in your home or wherever, it is used as the chemical to keep your pool clean and shiny and clear. But it has got lots of dangers as well, which we'll go into. Hydrogen peroxide is your bleach. A lot of you, I'm sure, use Jik in your washing. Keep your linens nice and white. Hydrogen peroxide is an oxidizer. Ones that are not so well known: lead nitrate is used in fireworks, in matches and explosives, and nitric acid. There's a lot of nitric acid here. We say it's found in metal polishes and cleaners. Nitric acid is quite a common product. You can also sort of buy it over the counter. So those are just some of them. We're going to talk in detail, a lot more detail, about ammonium nitrate and calcium hypochloride, which are two probably of the most hazardous and are probably the most common. So, as we've said, although not necessarily flammable themselves, can produce large amounts of oxygen, increasing the risk and intensity of fire in other material. So we've mentioned ammonium nitrate. UN 2072 is the United Nations number, and it is classed as a fertilizer. But you'll see at the bottom of the screen, it is considered to be an explosive, and all transport by road must be done under the approval or permits from the Chief Inspector of Explosives at the South African Police Services. So even though it is a fertilizer, it can very easily become an explosive. I'm going to say the acronym is AN for ammonium nitrate. As I said, it must be transported under permits from Chief Inspector of Explosives. The reason for this and how it becomes an explosive is by mixing a small quantity of hydrocarbon material. For example, 5% diesel fuel. It can be oil, it can be any type of hydrocarbon material. And it is not exactly 5%, but it's a low percentage. To the ammonium nitrate granules, it transforms it from a fertilizer into a very powerful explosive material. So from a mining point of view, it is relatively easy to transport. And so it's transported to the mines, both underground and surface mining. And when it's on site, they then mix in the hydrocarbon, which then turns, as I said, turns it into the explosive. They then use that, the prills, the granules, they inject those or pump them into the blast holes with a detonator and ignite the detonator, and bam, you've got an explosive. It also can be in an ammonium nitrate solution, which is commonly known as ANS, or AN emulsion. And this is used as a liquid, exactly the same principle. Instead of being in a granular form, it's in a liquid form, normally in a very, almost a greasy form. It's quite thick, so quite difficult to handle, quite difficult to pump. But I've had experiences in transporting ammonium nitrate solution, and as long as nothing untoward happens, it's pretty easy to transport. The tankers that transport it to the various mines have the solution in the tank itself, in the bulk tank, and then they have a small tank on the back of the tanker, which is the hydrocarbon material. So when they get to the mine, they then add the two together, and then they've got an explosive. That's a simple way of doing it. Others, they pump it into a MOU, which is a mobile unit where the mixture is done, and then that pumps it into the holes. So used a lot in explosives. A number of companies in South Africa produce this material: Sasol, Bulk Mining Explosives, AEL, and a few others. And a lot of it is actually exported into Africa for use in the copper mines in Zambia and in the Congo, in the DRC. So there's lots of it around, but it's not to be messed around with. So that's just a visual of a small drilling machine that's drilling the surface holes, and then the explosion, and you can see the pillared with the stepped surface where the mining is. They break out on the faces of each one of those steps, and that's how they break the material away. On some of the bigger mines, those holes can be up to 20 meters deep each hole. So they're breaking away a large volume of material in each blast. So solid ammonium nitrate, the prill or the granular form is a stable chemical and not liable to explode. It is not shock sensitive and requires a very strong initiating effect for it to detonate. It does not burn, but when involved in a fire, it will release oxygen and intensifies the fire. Because of this, ammonium nitrate is classified as a Division 5.1 oxidizing substance and not as an explosive. Where it becomes problematic is the next paragraph, where I say many contaminants can react or combine with ammonium nitrate to make it more sensitive to detonation from impact, heat, fire, static or spontaneous self-heating. So some of the contaminants that sensitize it include metals, combustible materials, oils, diesel, rags, or paper. So there's your oil and diesel, which is your hydrocarbon, sorry. Then also acids, chlorates, nitrates, and pool chemicals. So a whole lot of stuff can sensitize the material to a large degree. And you may, I'm sure you've heard about this, or you may have forgotten about it, but there was an explosion in Beirut on the 4th of August, 2020, nearly 2 years ago, where the ammonium nitrate that exploded came from a Russian leased vessel that stopped in Beirut while it was sailing in November 2013. So just remember that date, 2013, and the explosion happened in 2020. So it was sailing from Georgia and Russia to Mozambique. It was probably destined to go into the mines in Africa as well. The ship was abandoned, and the cargo is believed to have been offloaded to the port's warehouses, the site of the explosion on that Tuesday. The pair of explosions, the second much bigger than the first, struck the city of Beirut early Thursday evening, killing at least 154 people, wounding more than 5,000, and causing widespread damage. More than 1,000 people have been hospitalized and 120 are still in a critical condition. This is from a news report, so it was live at the time. So a nearly 2,750 ton stockpile of ammonium nitrate fertilizer is said to have been stored in the depot for 6 years. So this 2,750 tons was in the port, in the warehouse in the port, in 1-ton bags, which I'll show you pictures of just now. And over time, it would have deteriorated, the bags would have started breaking up, leaking, and then it would appear that they actually stored fireworks in the same warehouse. And it is thought that the fireworks ignited first, something ignited the fireworks, and that's why they talk about 2 blasts, a pair of explosions. One, the second much bigger than the first. The first blast was the fireworks going off, and then that then ignited the ammonium nitrate, which then basically took out a large part of the city. I've got a couple of links here to, and I'm not sure if they're going to work, so I'm going to try. There's some videos that I just want to share with you if we can get it to work. So just bear with me and let's give it a try. Oops, no, it didn't work.
I don't think it will work, but it's fine, Richard. I will copy them and send them on to the audience. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Rose.
Right.
Yeah, they were on news, all over the news, etc. at the time, but it's worth looking at them again, just to give you a reminder that if you are looking at transporting ammonium nitrate, you've got to be very careful. And to get a permit from the Chief Inspector of Explosives is not simple, but don't be tempted just to load it up as if it's fertilizer and off you go, because it looks like fertilizer, it smells like fertilizer. Everything tells you it's a fertilizer, but it has these particular dangers to it. So be very careful with that. That is what bulk ammonium nitrate is transported in. They are 1-ton bags. These are pictures of a product in Australia. So their placarding looks slightly different to ours, but there's the UN number. It's marked as an oxidizing agent, etc., etc. So that's what the bulk ammonium nitrate, or let's call it semi-bulk, would be transported. And that's generally what it's if it's imported material, it would come in those bags. And a lot of the material that is transported within Africa is also in those bags. It is also transported in bulk. In our last session, we spoke about bulk tankers. For example, a tanker that you transport cement in or something like that. You can transport this product in there as well, but it has to have what they call blasting discs and that type of thing built in as safety measures. If something does happen, that the whole tank won't explode. These bursting discs will give way and release the pressure and reduce the danger of an explosion taking place. So yeah, so that's the one. That's ammonium nitrate, as I said, and used a lot in the mining, but also used as a fertilizer. The other one, which is I mentioned, is very common. Sorry, I'm getting myself mixed up here. This is also I'll mark this as organic peroxide. It's not. This is also an oxidizer. The heading's incorrect there. H2H, or calcium hypochlorite, also known as trichlorine, or as we see it in the shops as H2H. I never knew what H2H stood for, but it's high test hypochlorite. I'm not sure what high test means, but some chemist has come up with that. So that is also has its dangers. So this information, and I've said at the bottom, is obtained from the safety data sheet. So if you are going to transport any dangerous goods, ask your client, ask your supplier for a copy of their SDS or safety data sheet. It's a legal requirement in terms of the Occupational Health and Safety Act that a producer of chemicals must be able to supply a safety data sheet. And this safety data sheet really is the Bible that you need to work from. And I'll show you two specific areas that you need to look at as a transporter. But on that safety data sheet, it's going to have some hazard pictograms, which is in the diamonds on the left-hand side of your screen. Flame that we saw in the diamond on the product. The diamond next to it is a corrosive, but you can see the picture of product being dripped onto metal and onto somebody's hand, which shows it's corrosive. The exclamation mark shows that it's an irritant, and on the far right hand is the picture of a dead fish in a dead tree, which shows it's very toxic to aquatic life. So that's very simply what you can, in one portion of the safety data sheet, that you can pick up is those give you a very quick glance at what the hazards are.
Madam Mario het gegaan iewers.
Please turn off your mic. Please turn off your mics. Thank you.
Sorry, colleagues, if we can ask you to please turn off your mics at all times. and keep them off, as well as your video, please. Thank you. Richard, as we continue, before you actually go to that next tab, for the benefit of those that are here for the first time, I'm sure you have mentioned this before. There is a question from someone, because there's a lot of terms that you've mentioned, a lot of abbreviations with regards to these products so far. So the question is, can I successfully apply and be certified for transportation of dangerous goods, even without a science background, considering obviously how hard it is to get that certificate to that permit to actually transport ammonium nitrate? So maybe for the benefit of those that are joining us for the first time, if you can just clarify that aspect for them.
Yes, you can. And I say it myself. I'm an ex-transporter. I'm not a chemist. I'm not an engineer. I'm a transporter. So I've learned this over time. I've studied it. I've made it part of my life to learn about and work with dangerous goods. But I first got involved with it when we started saying, what are we transporting? How do we transport it, et cetera, et cetera. So one thing is transporting, let's call it, I don't want to call them basics, but general goods in a global fashion. Others is when you start getting down to the particular products, for example, ammonium nitrate. So the first step is to get yourself set up, get your vehicle set up to transport dangerous goods, get your drivers trained, et cetera, et cetera. Then you can start applying for permits to transport ammonium nitrate, for example. And the problem is that the mines take a large delivery of ammonium nitrate, they put it into their warehouses, and then there may not be another shipment for a couple of months. So it's not a nice, constant business, but it is, if it's available, then it's quite worthwhile. But you don't have to be a chemist at all. It's a lot of it is really fairly common sense. And if you follow the sort of guidelines that I'm preparing or that are given to you at the moment, then it's not, I'm going to say it's not rocket science, but you have to be careful. You can't just rush in and just pick it, load it, and off you go. You need to make sure you do it correctly. So I hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you. You can continue, Richard. Matiha, I hope you have been answered there. You can continue, Richard.
Thank you. So we spoke about the safety data sheet. This is an example of the safety data sheet for your HTH, your calcium hypochlorite. On the left-hand side, it's quite small, but you'll see on the top right-hand corner, it's page 1 of 14. So this is only page 1 that I'm showing you on the left-hand side. It's called a safety data sheet. It used to be called a material safety data sheet, or an MSDS, and a few years ago, the name changed just to a safety data sheet, and the requirements, the design has been changed. Not the design, the contents. There is a international standard which specifies what this material safety or the safety data sheet must look like, what information it must contain, et cetera, So you don't want to get involved in drawing this up, because this is where the chemists get involved. They draw these up. But when you get your material from your client, or you get an inquiry from your client, say to them, please give me your safety data sheet. So it will, as I say, this is only page 1, but it will give you all sorts of information, which I'll show you a little bit more just now. But what's important, if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, under section 14, and there are 16 sections in a safety data sheet. Under section 14, is the first place you go to as a transporter and say, tell me about this product. And section 14 will tell you what the UN number is. Well, first, let's put, yeah, okay, UN number is 1748. And what I've circled above it is for land transport. And underneath it, it talks about ADR and RID. ADR is the European standard for the road transport of dangerous goods, which we've adopted a lot of those requirements into South Africa. And the RID is the rail transport of dangerous goods, which we've also adopted a lot for our rail transport. But you don't need to worry too much about that. You just need to say what is, some will talk about road transport, other land transport. The next column is sea transport, which is your IMDG, is your International Marine Dangerous Goods Code. And then your air transport is your IATA, your International Air Transport Association Dangerous Goods Code. We're not going to talk about those two. Those are international. I think I've mentioned it previously. If you transport by sea, doesn't matter where you are, in which country in the world, you transport under the IMDG code. And if you transport by air, you transport under the air transport code as well. Under the land transport, there are some variations between different countries, but the core, the basics are very much the same. For example, the UN number, you will see, is the same number. It doesn't matter what mode of transport that you're transporting under. And that UN number is allocated by what they call a panel of experts that sits at the United Nations. And they, as new products are evolved over time, they will sit together as an international body and say, right, this is the new product, right, what UN number do we give it? And early days, the UN numbers used to sort of follow a sequence when it was first, they were first established or first allocated. Now the sequence, there's very little sequence. So your new product would tag onto the bottom as probably 3,800 and something as a UN number. But it's very important that UN number is international. So if you're in, let's say, Russia or China or South America or wherever you are, that UN number is exactly the same. So that's the first thing. The second is your UN proper shipping name. Here, in all three cases, it's called calcium hypochlorite dry. The transport hazard class is the 5.1, which is what we've been talking about now. That it's 5. That's the 5.1. The packing group, there are 3 packing groups, and they vary per product. So we're not going to go into that detail now, but packing group 1 is the most hazardous. Packing group 2 is medium hazardous, and packing group 3 is least hazardous. So it's not, as I said, per product, it's calculated by the chemists. But if it says it's a packing group 2, as it is here, it is a medium hazard from a hazard point of view. The next one, is it a marine pollutant? In all 3 cases, yes. And then the others are, there's no information on those particular things. But the first 4 lines are really your important information when you're looking at transporting any dangerous goods. So it's a very good STS, and so that's why I've just shared it there. And it's a South African company. You'll see Innovative Water Care South Africa, Kempton Park, and it's situated at the NCP Kleurkop factory. So NCP produce chlorine, liquid chlorine. A lot of the chlorine that goes into the water treatment plants throughout South Africa is produced by NCP. And that goes in as a gas into the bulk water purification plants. And then as a side product, they produce this, the dry product as well. So from the safety data sheet, this is some of the information that comes out of it. Special hazards arising from the mixture. Sealed containers may rupture when heated. So it tells you keep it away from flames, from heat. An explosion can occur if either the carbon tetrachloride or dry ammonia compound fire extinguisher is used to extinguish a fire involving calcium hypochlorite. So again, from a firefighting point of view, make sure you've got the correct fire extinguishers. Advice to firefighters. Now, bearing in mind this product, you've put in the boot of your car when you bought it at the shop. You've taken it home. It's probably sitting in your garage or next to your swimming pool. Advice to firefighters: evacuate the area and contact emergency services. Toxic gases may be evolved in a fire situation. Remain upwind and wear full protective equipment. So what I'm trying to say, don't take it lightly, because you find it in your local Pick n Pay doesn't mean that it's not dangerous. In the last paragraph, this product is chemical reactive with many substances. Any contamination of the product with other substances by spill or otherwise may result in a chemical reaction and fire. This product is a strong oxidizer which is capable of intensifying a fire once started. So we heard those same words for the ammonium nitrate, oxidizer which is capable of intensifying a fire once started. So in small quantities, it is relatively safe, but in large quantities, it can be very dangerous. So so when you go and buy that product from your retailer, using name Pick n Pay, you can buy that. You can buy pool acid, you can buy chick, you can buy them all and put them in the boot of your car and take them home, no problem. Because in the legislation, it says any product that is purchased for retail use does not have to comply with the requirements of dangerous goods. So even if there's a term, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, you exempt quantity. Exempt quantity is the amount of product that you can transport, which if it's under that number of liters or that number of kilograms, you don't have to comply with any dangerous goods requirements. However, if you're a retail buyer, you're buying it for your own use, not buying it to resell it, you're buying it for your own use, you don't have to comply with any of these requirements. But you're putting acid and hypochlorite, HCH, into the boot of your car, those two, if they react, if the one spills and leaks and they mix, you could have an explosive situation. So be careful. Again, do not store product where daily average temperature exceeds 35 degrees centigrade. Average temperature, that's pretty high at 35, but we do get temperatures up there. Storage above this temperature may result in the evolution of chlorine gas. Chlorine gas is a toxic gas and has been used in the warfare, so we don't want to go there. Do not allow products to come into contact with other materials, for example, other pool chemical products, acids, etc. A chemical reaction with such substances can cause a fire of great intensity. Then your product and packaging disposal. Care must be taken to prevent environmental contamination from the use of this material. Use of the material as the user of the material has the responsibility to dispose of unused material, residues, and containers in compliance with all local, national laws and regulations regarding treatment, storage, and disposal of hazardous and non-hazardous waste. So if you've got a container that's had HTH in it, make sure it's nicely cleaned out, nicely washed before you put it in your trash can or before you give it to somebody else. Make sure it's clean. Otherwise, we could be contaminating the environment. Never mind the plastic that goes with it, but that's a different issue. Right, so those are your 5.1s, your organic peroxides. I don't know if there's any questions around that at the moment. Okay, let me carry on then. So your 5.2 is your organic peroxides, and this I'm not going to go into that much detail because this gets very, very technical, very scientific. But I'll try and explain to you the basics of it. The organic peroxides, and I think where it sums it up pretty well, is that the plastics and rubber industries are generally the most significant users of organic peroxides. There are dozens of different organic peroxide formulas, each with its own properties and risks. So we're not going to be able to go into all of those, other than to know that there are lots of different formulations and risks. Direct exposure to organic peroxides may cause eye, skin, or respiratory irritation, as well as nausea, drowsiness, and dizziness. Typical protective equipment includes eye protection and chemical-resistant gloves, but some formulations may require the use of respiratory protection, so breathing apparatus, etc. Again, the last clause on that screen, consult the manufacturer's safety data sheet for the specific concerns and mitigation measures. Again, that SDS has come up. As I said earlier, that's really your go, excuse me, your go-to place when you are dealing with chemicals. So again, it's happened to me many times. Somebody will say, can you transport X, Y, and Z? And the first thing you say to them is, send me this safety data sheet and let us look at it. Because I showed you earlier the UN number and the proper shipping name. A lot of companies have their own brand names. So the proper shipping name is the, let's call it the actual name of the product. Other companies will call it their own brand. And that's where the UN number helps to say brand name A and brand name B have got the same UN number. So in fact, if they're not identical products, they're very similar in nature. Different name, but similar in nature. So that's again where the safety data sheet helps you. Sorry, I see this is cut off slightly on the side, but organic peroxide formulations are thermally unstable, which means they will, they are sensitive when exposed to certain temperatures. So again, same as our organic peroxide, our oxidizers, unstable. Because organic peroxide formulations are thermally unstable, they must be transported and stored at temperatures in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. Again, there's your safety data sheet. So, very short section on organic peroxides, but as I said, it's very much the same precautions must be taken as with your oxidizers. So I hope that is of some interest and some use. But again, if there's any questions, let me try and help. But fairly short and sweet, because it's not that much. What can I say? Interesting information that I could give you, but lots of technical data. But that's where it all starts, unfortunately. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you so much, Richard. So everyone, there you have it. It's brief info, but it's a lot of good information, Richard, because we don't realize that keeping these substances, I mean, some of them, we do keep them in our garages as well. So it's good to know the dangers that they can cause with regards to that. So we didn't get any other questions from the audience. However, I would just like to ask, so with regards to all that info that you've given us with regards to the safety data sheet, so that is easily accessible online for someone who wants to have a look at that, if they're considering to look at stuff that includes oxidized substances or organic peroxide, they can easily find that online.
Yeah, generally you can just go onto Google and type in SDS for XYZ product.
Okay.
And then it'll come up. It may not be from your supplier, but there's a very good chance it'll come up from some other supplier.
Okay.
But again, if it's provided the UN numbers are the same, then you're pretty comfortable to use that as a guideline.
Oh, okay, sure. Putty, I see your hand is raised there. Is it possible for me to ask you to type in your question? If it's a very long question, I will ask you to just unmute, however, leave your video off, just unmute, and you can ask your question quickly to Richard while he is on.
Thank you, Rose. I thought my question will be a bit longer to type in. Yeah, just to ask Richard, in terms of the transportation of the 5.1 components, do we have challenges with the municipalities in terms of how they regulate them, and if they're regulating them differently, how do we manage that during a transition? Like my understanding is that maybe some of them, they might maybe, let's say for example, oxidizers, there will be people who regard them as agricultural, and they're also used in the explosive space. Just need to understand how we manage the compliance part of it there. Thank you, Rose.
Okay, thanks, Putty. The municipalities have a responsibility under the Fire Brigade Services Act, but generally, as long as you are compliant with your national legislation, which is the under the Road Transport Act, you shouldn't have a problem. Where the municipalities do have authority is they may not want you to transport a particular material through their municipality, because if they don't like the idea of you transporting ammonium nitrate through their municipality, they may say, no, you're not, or you can't go down the main street. You can go through, but you've got to go around, away from the main residential areas or something like that. But there's very few that actually do that. The only one that I know that has a bit of an issue is Harry Smith in the Free State, but they're just really trying to keep the trucks on the N3 and not going through the town to rest off in the town and that sort of stuff. It's more when trucks want to stop in the towns that the municipality gets a little bit nervous. Driving through, they don't normally have too much of a problem. So it depends, it varies from municipality to municipality. So I hope that answers you to a degree.
Thank you, Richard, for answering that. We'll take one more question from Mokone. you can also just put your audio on and not your video. Thank you.
Mokoni?
I'm not sure if Mokone is struggling with unmuting themselves there. Let me try and help you. Otherwise,
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Rose?
yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, I've got two questions for Richard. Very brief. The first one is about the compliance. I understand that there are people that keep. We're talking about the transportation of the dangerous goods. Do I need to be a licensed one from the government, or I just need my drivers to be licensed in accordance with the Road Management Act or whatever, or Traffic Management Act? Number one. Number two question is about the substance goods under 10 SANS 10228, which falls the hazardous goods falls under it. I just want to check with because it says all goods will be specified, but except explosives and radioactive. Do explosives and radioactive substances excluded under section 10228, or do they fall as a transporter? Can I also transport them under the same regulations or requirements that are set out as you've mentioned? Thank you.
Okay, some very good questions. Your compliance is, yes, your driver needs to have a license, he needs to be trained, and he needs to have a dangerous goods professional driving permit. What they call a PRDPD, professional driving permit, dangerous. So that's the first thing. Okay. The only compliance requirement other than that is the vehicle that you are transporting your dangerous goods with needs to be registered as a dangerous goods vehicle. So through the licensing department, through your municipal licensing department, when you are buying a new vehicle, or if you've got an existing vehicle, there are two discs on the windscreen. One is a license disc. The other is an operator, they call it an operator card, but it's actually a disc. On that disc, that is the disc that allows you to transport goods on that vehicle. So you would have had to go through a roadworthy, etc., to get that disc. On that disc, if you are just transporting general goods, cement or sugar or anything like that, just normal stuff, it will have a G on that disc. G standing for goods. If you want to transport dangerous goods, you have to declare it when you are doing your roadworthy on that vehicle, and they will then stamp your roadworthy certificate as dangerous goods, and on that disc you will have a G and a D. So G for goods and D for dangerous. So really that's those two. Your driver needs to be trained and have a dangerous goods professional driving permit, and your truck needs to be registered as a dangerous goods vehicle. Those are really the only two compliance requirements for you to get into the dangerous goods space. And then after that, it depends on the product that you're transporting, etc., the markings on the vehicles and the number of fire extinguishers and all that sort of thing, which we went through in the early sessions. Maybe Rose can share some of those with you. With regard to 10228, for those others that are on the call on the session, 10228 is SANS, South African National Standard 10228 or 10228, which is your identification and classification of dangerous goods. So your UN numbers that I spoke about are listed in SANS 10228. With regard to explosives and radioactive, you have to comply with all the requirements as laid down in 10228, as well as in SANS 10231, which is your operational requirements. But you then have to also comply with explosives, class 1. You have to comply with the requirements of the South African Police Services. So they have separate requirements. So the minimum is what we're talking about here. Then there's the additional requirements. For example, as I said earlier, if you want to transport ammonium nitrate, you have to have a permit from the Chief Inspector of Explosives. They regulate explosives in South Africa. On the radioactive material, very similar. The National Nuclear Regulator and the Department of Health regulate the nuclear movement of nuclear material. And so you've got to then get permits from them as well. So those are additional requirements over and above the basics. And it does make it more difficult because those requirements have higher higher levels, but not that difficult. But to get those permits is not that easy. So I hope that answers your question. Okay,
Yes,
Rose.
thank you for that, Richard. Mokone, I hope you are answered. You can just send a thumbs up. So thank you so much, everyone. This has been a very, very good session, Richard. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the insights. I think everyone benefited so much. I'm sure maybe other people will have other questions afterwards. You can feel free, everyone, to, as Richard has shared his email address, to email with any questions, or you can send them through to us. I have put through our email, my email address on there as well, and we can forward them to Richard. I will be sharing this session as well with everyone for you guys to watch afterwards and share with everyone else. But as we have seen and heard, it is very important for everyone to actually have the right knowledge of what needs to be aligned to the rules and regulations and everything else that is associated with the transportation of dangerous goods. So we will obviously be continuing with other sessions as pertaining to whatever else is to come. So always keep an eye out on all our social media platforms. Keep an eye out on all the emails, because once you register, I have your email address and we always send out the updates so that you can have updates of what's happening next. So guys, thank you so much for this time that you've given to listen to Richard. Richard, thank you so much for all the input. Once again, we really appreciate the time that you take to put together all this information, to give all these insights. You can also find Richard on LinkedIn. You can follow him and you can see you can get in touch with regards to anything else regarding the topics that we have mentioned today. You can get in touch with us. Our social media platforms as well, SyncPoint and Awiska are on there. I'll write the names for you. And if there's anything else, please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again in the next session. Richard, have yourself a good afternoon, and everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.